Okay, so this week we're going to take a look at masking images with another image to achieve an interesting design effect. Here I have this photo of this model here that we're going to use and kind of create something like a movie poster type of concept. In that I've got a document here already created that we're going to build the design in. I'm just going to go ahead and take this photo of this young lady and go ahead and drag and drop it over. I'm just holding the Shift key as I drag and drop it into that document. There it goes. So I'll go ahead and minimize this. I am going to go ahead and scale this up to fit in the image here, and I'm confident that I'm not scaling it too much where I'm going to lose a tremendous amount of quality. It is being built in low res anyway, but I just want it to fill in the overall image area that we're looking at here. So we'll just kind of position that right about here, a little dramatic position. And you'll notice what I've got here in the background is a simple image of this water splash. It's an iStock image, and it's just a simple water, and you can actually do a search for water splash on iStockphoto.com, and we'll return a whole bunch of different types of splashes. And a lot of people might look at these and go, well, what am I going to use a water splash for? There are a number of possibilities you can do with an abstract water splash like this. One of them being this. We're going to take this and make that into a layer mask. Now, in order to do that, you can approach this from several ways, but we're going to go ahead and make this an active selection. So I'm going to go into the channels of this image. Let's go into the channels palette, and I'm going to go ahead and load the luminosity of this image as a selection. And the way you do that is hold down the command key on Mac, Control on Windows, and you'll see the cursor changes to a little selection symbol. And I'm going to go ahead and click directly on the RGB channel, and it makes the luminosity, or the overall brightness of the image, as an active selection. Now, looking at this, you can see that the brightest areas are, of course, the background, and there's some subtle dark areas in the water itself. Well, if I go in that channels palette and go ahead and create a new blank layer, or new alpha channel, rather, and notice that the selection, because the white was in the background, it's got the background selected. Well, if we go into Select and go to Inverse, it'll flip that selection around, and now the water graphic itself is selected. So I'm going to go ahead and do a fill on this alpha channel. So go ahead and press Shift Delete, and we'll use white and normal, and click OK, and there it is. Now, you can see, like an alpha channel, white areas are selected, and the gray areas are partially selected, and black is unselected. So what we want to do here is make the water graphic a little bit brighter. So we'll do that first by going ahead and pressing Shift Delete again, and this time we're going to use the fill with white, but this time change the blend mode from normal to overlay. What that's going to do, it's going to make everything in this channel that's bright or white or gray and make it brighter. Well, it can't make white any brighter because white is white. So all the lighter gray colors are going to be forced to a lighter, even lighter gray color, and the black will remain unaffected. So we'll go click OK. You can see it got a little bit brighter. I can even do it a second time to make it that much more intense. Now, you want to be careful about not doing it too many times because the graphic will start to get a little distorted, or the quality will start to diminish. Now, what I am going to do before I go ahead and make this a selection is I don't want to see as much gray area inside the water here. So I am going to go ahead and do a levels adjustment. So let's go do a levels. And I'm just going to push the gray mid-tone slider here, push in a little bit. White out those areas. Don't want to take out too much detail, but enough to where we'll be able to see inside the selection. We can always make adjustments after the fact because we're going to be applying this as a layer mask. So go ahead and click OK. And there's my graphic. Well, I can notice that there's a couple little areas in the top here that I'm just going to fill in there. Okay, so now my channel is ready. I'm going to go ahead and load this as an active selection. If I go ahead and Command or Control click right on the alpha channel here, it'll load the active area as my selection. So now we're going to take that active selection and just drag and drop it, just like you would a graphic. Just move your cursor inside the selection area, and you'll notice the cursor changes to a little move selection cursor like that. And just take it and drag and drop it over into the working design file here. So we'll go ahead and minimize that for the moment. Now, even though the selection is going off the viewable area, it's still there. You can see that the entire selection is there. Oops. And I can click inside of it and move around. There we go. So it's entirely there. So on this image, you notice that this image of this woman is on its own layer. I'm going to go ahead and click on the layer mask icon here down here at the bottom, and it goes ahead and masks that image based on that selection, which was based on the graphic of the water. Now, because it did remember the entire graphic area, I'm going to go in here into the layers panel and unlink the layer mask to the layer itself. This is by default, it links the image, so when you move one around, it naturally moves the other one around with it. But if I go ahead and click on that chain link and unlink it and have that layer mask selected, I can move the mask itself around and get a number of different possibilities. And this is where the experimentation comes in to where you want to place this, because you can move around, distort, and rotate the layer mask independently of the layer itself. So if I go and rotate the image around, I can see a number of different types of possibilities happening and how I can reveal the subject with this layer mask. So I'm going to go ahead and position that there for the moment. And I can notice things that I seem a little bit more of the water here than I want to, so I can go ahead and do another levels adjustment on the layer mask and brighten that area up, and notice how it tends to disappear right before your very eyes, revealing more of that image underneath. Pretty cool. Now, I notice this area here is a little too much. It's covering a little bit more than I want, so I can just merely select that area. And again, on the layer mask, you know it's black, it's revealing, or it's hiding rather. We're going to fill it with white, and it will reveal the image, giving us a little bit of more interesting framing of our subject. And we can certainly take that to the next level and apply an adjustment layer. We'll do a hue saturation and add some color to this. So we'll go ahead and click colorize, and let's give it maybe a really bloody dramatic look. Like it's going to be like a scary thriller movie. Who knows? But you can see it's colorizing that. It's leaving the white area, giving me a very interesting result. And again, I can go back into that, select that layer mask, and move it around. And say, well, maybe I like it more showing just a little bit. But built from that one single water graphic, we've got a number of possibilities in how we can present the image here. Now, of course, you don't have to stick with red. Red's a little bit bloody dramatic, so maybe we go with a blue for something a little bit more subtle, or a little less dramatic than the bloodiness that we saw a moment ago. Maybe this is it's a movie that takes place in the water. Who knows? Now, another really cool thing about this is when you're designing with a layer mask like this, because this is another new feature, is that if you go into the window menu and go down here and choose masks, this mask panel allows you to edit the layer mask even further with an interesting feature here called density. And this is pretty much like the opacity of the layer mask. If I take the slider here and push it down to around, let's say 75, you can see that the image, let's actually put the photo, drag it back down here. There we go. So you can see the mask is becoming somewhat transparent. You can see through it ever so slightly, creating another interesting effect. And we've done nothing to the image but merely changed the density of the layer mask. I can always push it back up and get the full density. I can take it even further down to have that image look even a little bit more subtle, like it's barely there. Another interesting thing you can do is invert the mask. If I click on the invert button here, you can see the graphic turns into almost like a splat over the face. Different possibilities here. We're using the same graphic, same layer mask, but we're just messing around with its properties here in the mask panel to achieve something very different. I'm going to re-invert that and bring this back up to right about here. That's actually going to bring it up to 100%. So one more thing I want to show you real quick is just to perhaps give the image a little bit more depth, you can go ahead and apply a layer style to this layer. Let's go ahead and let's go do an inner shadow. And notice the difference there. If I just turn it on and off, you can see it's giving me that raised look for this graphic, the white graphic here, almost giving me a really interesting look. And if I go in here, reselect that mask and drop the opacity down, or the density of the mask rather, we get another interesting effect. If I invert the mask again and drop that density down, you can see I'm getting almost like it's a splatter or like a paint splatter effect on the image right there itself. So a number of possibilities when you're working with layer masking. Don't just try gradients and brushes. Perhaps try an image and generate a selection from it and turn that into a layer mask and use this mask panel to come up with several different possibilities and scenarios. And again, remember to unlink that layer mask to the layer so you can move that layer mask or that graphic around to get much better look. In fact, in this case, one last thing I want to do here, I can notice I'm going to go ahead and scale up the mask So it will, in fact, reveal quite a bit more of my image there. There we go. So looking pretty good. So again, layer mask, and if you, as well as you may as well know, as you may know is what I meant to say, that the layer mask here is non-destructive. It's done nothing to our original image. In fact, if I shift click right on the layer mask, there you can turn off this adjustment layer. There you can see that original photo we dragged over is still fully intact, just as it looked when we first brought it into the layout. So all we've done is put a layer mask on it and an adjustment layer to get a really interesting result.